Hi, David, and welcome, listeners. Welcome back to the Holistic Academy podcast. Here, we like to investigate ancient wisdom with cutting edge science to help you live healthy, happy, and holistic lives. Last week, we talked all about our family dynamics, including attachment styles. Lots was revealed, and we also talked a little bit about the mother and father wound. So this week we're taking it one step further and we're going to be talking about narcissism. So this is a hot topic, probably something that a lot of you have come across before, but it's important to understand narcissism from many different lenses and understand also our emotional boundaries and how we can protect our energy and mental health. I'm Amy.
And I'm David, and thank you, Amy, for introducing the topic. Today we are going to dissect this one of the most requested topics in terms of love and relationships and what is happening with us when we relate to other people. So we will talk about this narcissism, the idea that is just spreading all over the place, and sometimes it's misunderstood, I think, and people want to label everyone as narcissist, but we're going to discover today that that's not the case, and how to create emotional boundaries. And I love this topic because it's deep, because it's practical, and honestly, a little life saving for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So let's set the scene. I'm sure a lot of people have felt this. Have you ever walked away from someone feeling drained or confused or doubting yourself? Couldn't explain why. Maybe they were charming, magnetic, or even inspiring at first. But over time, you felt yourself start to shrink.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. And those are the people that are known as energy vampires, and they suck your energy, and you feel depleted. Mostly, they are very good at blaming other people, not accepting their own responsibility, and of course, many times being presum- presumptuous or showing off things. And today we are going to talk about this narcissism, the emotional boundaries, but we are going to mix them with the ancient wisdom and what happened before and the science behind these dynamics that happen and how to finally break free from them and step away from these kind of people. So, are there any ancient stories on this topic, Amy?
I'm glad you've asked. In Greek mythology, there's an ancient story about someone called Narcissus. He
Mhm.
is a figure whose story was passed down through oral tradition. So in the past, a lot of moral wisdom was passed through stories and storytelling. But this was a story later retold by poets like Ovid. Narcissus's life became a warning story about self-obsession, illusion, and emotional blindness.
Mhm.
Narcissus was a beautiful young man, but he actually rejected everyone who loved him. Narcissus falls in love with his own reflection in the water, and he slowly wastes away, unable to pull himself away from the illusion of himself. So, where he dies in this story, a flower grows, and the Narcissus flower is a daffodil. So, if you are familiar with any European languages, the daffodil is literally called Narcissus, and it's a symbol of self obsession, illusion, emotional unavailability, the danger of mistaking reflection for connection. And long before psychology, humans here understood the danger of people who cannot truly see others and only sees themselves, thinking about themselves, people without empathy. So
Mhm.
yeah, let's explore again, David, why narcissistic personalities exist and a bit about the science.
Well, now let's go back to this modern psychology. that describes that narcissism on a spectrum, with the clinical form known as narcissistic personality disorder. At the root, research suggests that narcissistic traits often come from early emotional neglect, inconsistent caregiving, conditional love, love only when performing well, trauma plus shame, fragile self worth masked by grandiosity. In simple terms, narcissism is often a survival strategy, not confidence. Behind the arrogance is usually a wounded inner child, deep fear of vulnerability, terror of being seen as not enough. And this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it explains why this pattern exists. And this just made me remember people that had kind of those characteristics, and they really align very well with this model that psychology explains, because they usually expect that you do all the work if they are your friends. If they are your intimate couple, well, they never recognize what you do, and they always recognize what they do. And it's difficult for them to accept that they made a mistake and apologize. That's also one of the big characteristics I can think of.
Absolutely, you've nailed a lot of them there, David. And I think that a lot of us can relate in our personal lives. But I think it's really important and interesting to hear what you said behind that arrogance and inflated sense of self. It's this sort of weakness, this wounded inner child, someone who hasn't been able to develop in a safe environment. So I think it's an interesting thing to explore. And I'm not quite sure if it's down to whether you're born with it or whether you're conditioned by your environment with it. So it is slightly different to a psychopath and a sociopath. But today we're going to be exploring more narcissistic personality disorder, and there are a lot of crossover as well. But it's really interesting in the science, as you were saying, David, if we move to neuroscience, because people do brain imaging studies about people with narcissistic personality disorder, and they show something really striking. There's a key region called the anterior insula, and that region is significantly underdeveloped in many of them. So their brain is in some way limited. It hasn't fully developed and grown in a way that a healthy adult's brain might do.
Mhm. And the anterior insula, and that's the part of the brain that lets you feel your own heartbeat, your gut instincts, and it's central to empathy. So it's basically, if I see you crying, my anterior insula lights up and helps me feel into your sadness. And it's what allows emotional connection. And that's also something that we can see in them, that is difficult, that they have these reactions from something emotional that happened, and they don't seem to care, let's say.
Exactly. So it's good to notice when you feel like someone's not caring. That's a big um, red flag, I guess, but your gut will be feeling it. And I think when you go through narcissistic relationships and family relationships, you end up losing trust in your gut feeling. And it's such a liberating moment when you step out and you rebuild that trust with your gut. But yes, so narcissists, they have this region, the anterior insula, and it often has much less gray matter. So it's not just that they're choosing to ignore your pain, it's biological. They actually struggle to feel your pain. As you said, David, they can have this cognitive empathy, so they understand you're sad, but not affective empathy. So they don't actually feel the sadness in your body. It's basically like saying or having information without the emotional signal, a broken radio receiver. So it's kind of sad for them because they can't connect on that deep level and their brains are actually wired a little bit differently.
Mm. So that explains why it can feel so cold. And it doesn't stop at the brain. Their bodies show stress too. A study from the University of Chicago found that people with strong narcissistic traits often have higher levels of oxidative stress in their blood, and their system is constantly on alert, almost like it's rusting from the inside out, always defending that fragile false self they have built. And that if we can download that characteristic or that science explained into easy words, it's just that when they feel criticized or threatened, they always step away or defend themselves about what you said, and they take things too personal.
Yeah, they can get very defensive. And I like what you said, that false sense of self. And when you see through a narcissistic illusion and become disillusioned, and you point it out, they really don't like that. So they'll do anything to try and silence you or belittle you or put you down, or even this idea of contempt where they pinpoint the words that you're saying and making it about the words and your tone rather than what you've actually said with the words and what boundary you're setting. And if you set a boundary and someone disrespects that boundary, then they are also likely to be someone who's a narcissist because they're not actually hearing what you're saying and being a respectful person. They're just thinking about themselves and getting their needs met. So it often is sadly a place where you find codependent relationships too. But as we've worked out, what looks like confidence on the outside of a narcissist is often a nervous system stuck in survival mode on the inside.
Mm. And they are highly stressed, which reduces the activity in the brain's reasoning and regulation center while ramping up the alarm system. So they are constantly in this sympathetic mode, and they are constantly burning out energy by defending themselves. So their chronic stress means they find it harder to think logically. That's why they also have this characteristic that I just remember, that is they translate your words into their own words, and they just change the message as if you were speaking another language.
Twisting story, exactly.
Yeah. And that makes us confused and doubt ourselves a lot when we are in relationship with someone with narcissistic personality disorder.
Absolutely. It's so true. So let's reflect a bit more on their personality. They often seem confident, charming, even larger than life, but underneath that shine is fragility. Their self love isn't really love, it's a defensive armor. They appear to adore themselves, but in truth, it's an anxious, self protective kind of admiration. They're constantly monitoring threats to that image to self preserve that fake self, which is why criticism feels unbearable to them. And that's why, for anyone in a relationship with a narcissist, understanding this isn't about making excuses and feeling empathy for them. It's about clarity for you. You can see the patterns, understand the biology, and protect your energy. Narcissists don't change as much as you think you can be the one to change them and that you can be the difference. They don't. And it's the hardest thing to accept that as much as you love and care about this person. But as soon as you know down the line that they're suffering with this, there's only one thing that you can do, and that's protect yourself and move away, even though it probably feels like the hardest thing. They don't change. So, what are the key signs and how should we spot the red flags, David?
Thank you, Amy. Spotting the red flags is not ignoring them, which is really, really important so that you can break these flags into two types of narcissist. One that is overt and one that is covert. And overt narcissists are the classic image: loud, boastful, and arrogant. Covert narcissists, on the other hand, are quieter, more subtle, but just as manipulative, and sometimes they disguise themselves as victims.
Exactly. We're going to talk about both of them now. So let's start a little bit with the overt narcissist. But it's good to notice both because I think I've been in relationships with both and I thought I've healed myself with that one type, the overt. But oh no, now I'm dealing with a covert. So it's also something that is not necessarily my fault, but it's just something I need to heal within me and work out why I'm attracting these types of people in my own life. And a lot of it to do with is about how we've grown up or our own sense of worth or what we have seen as a healthy relationship or how our parents have related to each other growing up. So it's a really empowering story to understand about these different types, but don't make it think that David and I know anything more than you do about these types of people. They come in many masks, faces, and disguises, and life teaches you a lot of lessons. But the moment you realize what's going on and you realize you're not the problem, it's them, and they're not taking that responsibility, and your gut is screaming at you, that's your big sign, your big green flag to run away and leave
Yeah.
them. So, yeah, let's start a little bit more with the overt narcissists.
Yeah, the red flags for this type of narcissist are constant need for attention and admiration, boastfulness and exaggeration of achievements, difficulty handling criticism, even mild feedback feels like a personal attack, and belittle or demeaning others to feel superior, a lack of empathy that's obvious in interactions.
Yeah. And I think that's easy to notice now, probably with some of you are listening and some of your partnerships. But some people are both a bit over and a bit covert, so they can be blurred together. But it's nice that we're just distinguishing the two. I think another one is they like to, as you were saying, belittle, punish for pleasure, ignore you, be defensive. So if you see these patterns coming up and up again, you might be dealing with someone with this type of personality. So then there's the covert narcissist, and as you said, David, they are much more quiet. They're sometimes called the vulnerable narcissist. They're sneaky, but they also do a lot of victim blaming. So, what are the red flags are there so that people know what to look for?
Well, they are passive aggressive behavior. They may guilt, trip, or sulk instead of confronting issues, playing the victim to manipulate others' sympathy, subtle gaslighting, making you doubt your perception or memory. This relates so much. Envy or resentment masked as concern or helpfulness, appearing humble or insecure while secretly believing they are special or entitled. Well, this is a very important one. They appear that they are very, let's say, altruistic and people pleasers sometimes, but they are just masking a behavior into something that they are secretly doing to operate that manipulative behavior. And here is
Absolutely.
the key: it's not about these isolated behaviors, it's also about the patterns. One off comment or action doesn't define someone, but consistent patterns that erode your self esteem, make you doubt yourself, or leave you feeling drained, that's your red flag.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just something that erodes over time. So they often can come in these different masks. And I think we've all experienced it where we try and put on our best self when we get into a relationship But
Mm.
after 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, the mask might come off and then they become more dependent on you, more childlike, more blaming. And at that moment, you have to realize that this is the real person. There's no potential there, or falling in love with the potential, or getting back to their best self when they were performing to get you in their lives. It's about realizing this pattern. And that's one of the hardest things in life, I think, is to really confront the patterns that you are reliving and making a change to learn about them, cut them off, break that cycle, and begin again, and really create those relationships, environments, and communities that are heart aligned and that you deserve and that really care about you.
Mm. Yeah, that's so important to have this network support that also you can be open about the things that are happening with you, and so that you can have an objective point of view which is not biased by your own, let's say, interpretation as well.
I do
So
think good point because narcissists try and cut you off from people and your friends, and just then you'll
mm,
be just listening to their twisted narrative of things and believing them. So you're right, David. Having that objective point of view from your friends and talking about the reality of the situation is super helpful, and reaching out for support when you need it. The friends
mhm.
do come through.
Yeah. So now we are going to discuss why you get trapped by narcissistic dynamics. And there is a cycle of trauma bonding, love bombing, and breadcrumbing, all ending in being. Let's say love bombing, IS, an intense, overwhelming display of affection, attention, and praise at the very beginning of our relationship. Think non-stop text, gifts, compliments, promises of the future, all very fast. It traps people because your brain experiences a rush of dopamine and oxytocin, the love chemicals. You feel seen, wanted, and special, almost addictive. And it creates instant emotional dependency because your nervous system starts associating them with safety and excitement. Imagine meeting someone who showers you with attention and says all the right things. You feel like you've known them forever, even if it's only been a week. That intense rush makes it hard to see the red flags.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Trauma bonding, it's almost like it's the love you've always dreamed of, and it all comes at once, and love at first sight, and they're your soulmates. But it's also because we desire connection, and that's a natural thing to desire and want. But because it's so over the top, and that is what is actually a red flag. And unfortunately, it's a red flag as well. I've come to learn if people say they've fallen in love with you at first sight, because they don't even know you. They don't even know what love is. Love is so much deeper. That is so superficial. So remember, narcissists, they are quite superficial, but trauma bonding is big. Oh no, that was love bombing, wasn't it? So love
Yeah.
bombing is big, but it also can create this trauma bomb because then you feel vulnerable and open to them. So trauma bonding is this strong emotional attachment created from the love bombing, where someone who might repeatedly hurt or criticize or abandon you. This often happens when there's positive attention and affection, but they're mixed with neglect or abuse. So you start to feel like that the relationship dynamic's changing a bit. Sometimes you stand up for yourself and you fall out, but then you have this intense emotional reconnection and intimate time. But this traps us as well because our brain craves the brief moments of kindness, hoping for more, even when the pattern is harmful. So we need to remember to not accept the bare minimum. And if there is this pattern of making it and breaking it and breaking
Mm.
it, coming back together, then you are in this trauma bond. And that mirrors this childhood attachment experience that we were talking about last week, where it makes the cycle feel familiar or normal if you were raised in a similar bond with your family. Over time, though, we get stuck in it because it creates loyalty to someone and we feel loyal to them. We were the peacekeeper at home, so we want to keep the peace and offer our empathy. But over time, that's going to undermine our own well-being because they only care about their own well-being and getting their needs met, not yours.
Mm.
So you might be familiar. They might insult you a little bit one day and then apologize lavishly the next. You then
Mm.
forgive them thinking that they've changed, and again, they're saying the right things. But over time, they change for a few days and the cycle repeats. But you stay hoping for this consistency that they kind of show, but that consistency never comes. So that's another big red flag. So the love bombing and the trauma bonding. And also, you might share a lot of your vulnerable stories in this stage because you want that deeper connection with them and you felt that love at the beginning. So you offer more. But unfortunately, with narcissists, a lot of them twist your stories or use it against you, and you end up feeling more down or depleted. And it's often because they want to have that bigger sense of self than you. So they want to make sure that they've done better things than you. You're putting them on a pedestal. That's what they feed off of mainly. So the third is breadcrumbing. And what's that, David?
Well, that is giving small, inconsistent signs of attention or affection to keep someone interested without real commitment. Text, vague plans, compliments, just enough to keep you hoping. It traps people because it keeps you invested emotionally without actually giving you security and feeds a sense of uncertainty, which increases obsession and focus on the other person. Your mind constantly calculates, will this text mean something? Will they show up? Which drains energy and self confidence. They reply late, sometimes don't follow through on plans, but then send a flirty text. You end up hanging on every message, hoping it means they actually care. And many times you sacrifice your plans with other people just because you are waiting on them to be committed with your plans with them, no?
Yeah, we're very curious creatures, but the more inconsistent with someone, it's like we become more obsessed and addicted to it because it's like we're hanging to those little bits of energy that make us feel good, but we're missing out on the reality of the situation. We're almost in a fantasy that it is this good. And people who accept the breadcrumbs, you deserve more than that. That's worse than bare minimum. A little like on your story on Instagram, not sending you a message though, and not communicating or replying back for hours or a day or weeks. That is just breadcrumbs. And you don't deserve people in that your life. Stop letting them live in your brain rent free. It's better that they aren't going to use you as their energetic supply then and you keep your peace, then you pursue these people. As you said, David, they are energy vampires, and we need to just reinvest that energy into ourselves so that we can create the life we desire and the environment and the relationships that we want. But people don't fall into narcissistic relationships because they're weak, and that's important to know.
Mm.
I can relate. We fall in love because we're empathetic, loyal, hopeful, emotionally open. We're actually really powerful people and they want to use our light to light them up. But in the end, we give so much of our light that it dims out. So if you notice anybody in your life that's trying to steal your light, not light you up with them, and being down, negative, and defensive and causing problems and blaming you, then it's likely that your light is starting to go off. And especially then, if you doubt yourself and get confused, you need to run away and find a way to relight yourself because your light is powerful. But this is what they go for. So you're not weak, you're probably strong, but you've probably also been conditioned by childhood. So our nervous system, our heart, our mind, even in our body, these are learned patterns early on where we were coping with survival a lot of the time, adapting perhaps to parents who showed emotional inconsistency. Or if you were rewarded to keep the peace or be the good girl and the good boy, then you also then conformed into just being that also people pleaser and not setting boundaries and being kind and overgiving. But this doesn't make you broken, it makes you human. And it also makes you not a narcissist. So a lot of us get worried as well that we might turn into narcissists if we have been raised by difficult parents. But if you feel empathy and you are loyal and you're kind, these are all things that they don't have. And remember what we said at the beginning, if they can't feel your pain, feel that empathy, then again, it's probably someone that will never understand you. So don't over explain to them, don't be vulnerable to them. Just set your loving boundary with them and protect your mental health. The problem isn't you, the problem is them. And it's the problem is that pattern and that program we were taught to follow growing up. But the good news is we are adults and those patterns can be unlearned. But we need to, of course, work on it. It's not going to change overnight. But you
Yeah.
can reclaim your energy. You can learn to trust yourself again. And you can set boundaries with people who love you and that people who respect them so they actually stick. And people who also prioritize your needs as much as theirs.
Mm.
So, to summarize, some common hooks that we need to look out for is the love bombing, that intense charm and fast intimacy. But sometimes they also say, we'll take it slow. So that's also sometimes a sign that they're not quite right. So it's very confusing. But of course, at the beginning, they'll show up as the perfect person, the Prince Charming, and they'll agree with everything that you say often. So they have that intense charm, fast intimacy. Then we have the trauma bonding. And then we have that sort of breadcrumbing where you have that hot and cold affection, the intermittent reinforcement. Those are some of the common hooks.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy, for letting me gain my voice again. I was just having this cough. And I think that what you mentioned is extremely important because nowadays I feel that many friendships behave and adopt this narcissistic pattern of making you not replying your messages, not asking how you are sometimes in, let's say, 2 or 3 months. But then when they need something, they look for you. And that's very common also because when people look for you just because they need something, that's a red flag as well, because that means that you just satisfy the need and then they will disappear another 3 months or 6 months. And whenever you feel that you need support, they just disappear. I had those experiences with more than 3 or 4 friendships. And I really am grateful that these people step away from me because they can be these vampires that you are just thinking that you have as friends, but they are not. They are just waiting for something that they will need and look for you. So the other common hooks are gaslighting, you trying to earn emotional safety. And if you grew up needing to emotionally manage others, this dynamic can feel familiar, even normal. So your nervous system mistakes intensity for connection. And this is where we are going to also talk about how to heal yourself and protect your energy with boundaries if you find yourself in one of these types of relationships. Recognize the patterns, not apologies. You can tell more about the behaviors than words. And this is very important because I also say that a lot of times. I mean, I don't like too much the praising words or words that are just showing affection, but the behavior shows another thing. So for me, actions speak more than words. And regain control over your attention and time. So don't waste your time thinking that these people are going to be with you, because probably they are not until they need something. Ask yourself, am I getting love or just the illusion of it? And that's the breadcrumbing that you were talking about. And use these signs as early warnings to protect your energy.
Yes. So we need to spot these red flags that we've spoken about. And when we can, this is where we have a moment. We can make a new choice and we can choose to take back our power. Boundaries are not walls, they're not doors that you can't be open, but they're doors with locks. So you've set this boundary and it's there. You are the one with the key to unlock it. But it's important because there are some things that we just should not tolerate in our lives. And that is abuse, whether it's financial abuse, mental, physical, sexual abuse, all of the types of abuse are just not okay. So it's very important that we do set these boundaries, and it's also part of loving ourselves. What are these boundaries? What will we not tolerate? What will we walk away from when we are in a difficult environment or situation or relationship dynamic or conversation? So, practical boundary tools, how to set a boundary if you are in these relationships. You can name the behavior and not the person. So you could say, I'm not okay with being spoken to that way. So you're not saying, you're yelling at me, you're causing all these issues, you're protecting yourself by not using you, but naming the behavior and not making it about the person. I'm not okay with being spoken to that way.
Mhm.
Another thing is to limit access, not love. So you can still care about someone, but don't let them drain you. If you find them always taking up time, always needing affection, always being an attention seeker, then you need to set some boundaries. And it might not always be a narcissist who's taking up a lot of your energy. People must just love your energy and hanging out with you and enjoy your friendship. But sometimes over time it can drain you, and you can still love them, but you can protect yourself in the same way. So for example, if someone's venting a lot and you're not in the right headspace for it, you could say, I love you, but I can't talk when you're in this space or when you're yelling. Let's discuss this tomorrow. Here you're
Mm.
caring, but you're not letting the energy overwhelm you. So again, you're setting some sacred boundaries around how you want the conversation to go. And especially if they raise their voice, it's not a very nice thing to be on the receiving end of.
Mm.
Another way is to protect yourself is to stop over explaining your boundaries. Your boundaries are non-negotiable, so they can't be debated. So if your partner texts you constantly whilst you're at work and you've said that you can't, you could just reply really simply, I can't chat right now. No lengthy explanation is needed. You set the rule, you don't need approval. So if you've said don't text, then just send short ones back. Also, as we said, David, watch these patterns, not apologies. I have been trapped by this. They're always saying the right words, or they're always able to apologize in a really great way, but there's never amends being made, or they're never changing their behavior and committing to it for a long time. So these are patterns that wear us down. And obviously, you have to go through the experience to see these patterns. But when you see them, please have that courage to step out of it and speak to people you know. Change is behavioral, not verbal. So don't always believe the words. If they keep breaking promises, don't get caught up in, I hope they change or one day it's going to work out. Just notice the repeated behavior and build the case for leaving that relationship.
Mm.
Sometimes you might find that they aren't very respectful with your time, and they might say that they're going to be on time, but they're late every weekend. They might say they're going to improve, but their actions say otherwise. So that is really what matters. Just start spotting these patterns. Even writing it down in a journal can help, or in your notes in your folder. And over time, you might start to see, this isn't in alignment, and I'm worth more.
Yeah, it's so important that you mentioned that because I think we lose count of how many times they have repeated something. And as we are mentioning in these kind of red flags, inconsistent behavior is one of the most common characteristics of this kind of personality. And also is the one that affects you the most, I think, because this inconsistency makes you feel that you are there, but you are not, that they are going to change, but they are not, that they love you one day, but the other one they don't, or they show it in words, but not in actions. So you have this too much stuff to deal with, and your brain is just filling the space with this negative energy. So this is when you can use your body to regulate the boundaries and land better when your nervous system is calm. So it's easy to get reactive in heated moments. So let's pause first, take a few deep breaths, go for a short walk, or do a grounding exercise before responding. And being in silence also, it's extremely important when you feel that you are going to be heated. One technique that I found very helpful last year to regulate this kind of energy that comes fast is just sensing the temperature of my body. Whenever you feel that something is really making you angry, you feel that your temperature raises, and you feel sometimes also in your hands that you are making fist without noticing. So that is something that is going to lead you to snap, probably. So instead of snapping back in an argument, you can calmly say, I'm too upset to talk right now. I need 20 minutes. This keeps your boundaries firm and your relationship healthier.
Absolutely. And thanks for bringing those up, David. I think it is really important to regulate your nervous system and also know that you have the power to walk away. So instead of snapping back, I've used this a lot and they don't like it, but it's so much nicer for you is not making that argument escalate, but leaving is the best way to de-escalate it. And then you can just both take time to think and rethink until you come back in a calmer way, because you can't really hear anyone when they're yelling or shouting, and you're definitely not listening to their words, and some of the words they say they regret, so perhaps they don't mean it. So it's much better to keep your relationship healthy by taking those 5 minutes out or 20 minutes out if you're dysregulated, and then
Mhm.
coming back from that calm space. So let's say that you've realized these patterns and you suddenly thought, oh no, I've listened to Amy and David's podcast, or yes, I am in that relationship, but I've managed to get out of it and I'm on that healing journey. So amazing if you've got to that step, and if you haven't, then you will get there. You do have the strength inside. And it's just today is just about becoming aware of it. But then little by little, you can make the right steps to reclaim your power and your energy and find the relationship that you truly deserve. And that's truly loving. But yes, when you come out of a relationship, we can talk a little bit before we end it about how you can heal after narcissistic relationships. So when you finally had that courage to recognize what you're dealing with and to walk away, it's important to acknowledge your anxiety and intense emotions. As we said, it's like having a drug addiction or an obsession. So it's going to take a little bit of time to rewire and reset yourself and recalibrate. But you could ground yourself using these methods. So even when you're in a relationship or out, these are good methods to have a look at. I like to do this one where you activate your five senses by naming 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you might be able to smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And that just takes you out of this chaotic, oh, I can't believe what they've done to me, or what's going on, or I don't know what to do next. It can bring you straight back into your body. And another good thing about your senses is you could have a cup of tea, something you like, eat a really nice meal, or if you have essential oils, you could use those smells to help regulate you.
Mm.
Another great technique to self-soothe is to remember that that they're not in your life, the only person who can love you and heal you is yourself. So make a lovely bath or shower, have a shower, maybe light a candle, feel something soft, read your favorite book, stroke a pet, or
Mm.
yeah, make yourself some good food or have a yummy snack, anything to nourish yourself. That's a great way to ground and just re-regulate. Lots of people talk about breathing, but it's another great reminder. It's a free tool. We could use our breath to regulate. There's the breath, that's the 4-7-8. So in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out for 8 and repeat. And that can make you feel really calm. It's also quite useful for sleeping. Another really good thing is we need to just distract ourselves sometimes. Sometimes it's not good to dwell and to overthink about all these scenarios that might never ever happen anyway. So my friend
Mm.
does her times tables to distract herself, which I think is quite good. And then you're in a different mindset. My sister's psychologist shared about having a worry jumper. So before bed, when you're ready to give up your worries and put them away, you can imagine taking off your worry jumper and putting it in the wardrobe and then sleeping. And once you put it in there, you must stop worrying. So that's quite a fun one. But yeah, it's important just to remember you do have the tools to heal yourself. It's just going gentle and easy. And little by little, you'll learn that you are amazing to love and you will love time on your own with or without people. And one day, if it's in alignment, the right person who will give you the love that you deserve will come along. But we must heal ourselves, otherwise, we repeat patterns too.
Yeah, many people think that healing after a toxic or narcissistic relationship means building walls, shutting down, or becoming tough so you never get hurt again. But that's not the point, and that's not gonna happen because love involves being hurt sometimes, and in fact, it often backfires. So, healing isn't about becoming harder, it's about becoming clearer and knowing yourself more, knowing yourself, also the different kind of traumas that you experience in life, as the past episode that we talk about the mother and father wounds. Those are extremely important, and they are the blueprint of why you repeat these relationships and these patterns in your adult life. So here are our final holistic tips to heal narcissistic abuse and live your best life. Number one is having clarity over bitterness. Healing is about seeing people and situations as they truly are, not through the fog of hurt or hope. Example, let's say instead of thinking all men or women are narcissists, which is nowadays the motto in the media, you recognize some people have these patterns and I can spot them early. I can see the red flags early. Number two, trusting your instincts. Trauma can numb your inner guidance, so healing helps you listen to your gut again and rebuild trust in your intuition. Learn to spot these red flags early. For example, you feel uneasy about a partner's behavior. Instead of doubting yourself, you act on that instinct, not out of fear but clarity, and talk about what is going on or walk away if it doesn't feel in alignment with your values and the love that you desire.
Yeah, those are some good tips, David. Number 3 is about setting our loving boundaries. with love and not fear. Clear boundaries are not walls, they're gates that you control. They are emotional self respect for yourself. They
Mm.
help develop self trust, and they're helping you ask for what you need or don't need over sacrificing yourself for others' needs. Also, we often people please. So, by setting boundaries, you're breaking that cycle and you're not just being delicate and treading on eggshells, protecting someone else's feelings, protecting their reactions or their well being. You're turning the script round and finally thinking for yourself about yourself and how to put your well being first. So, people, as we mentioned, could say, I need space when we fight. And that is not offering rejection to the partner, but that's honoring your energy whilst remaining loving. So, it's good to set these boundaries to protect our energy and our peace. Number 4 is reclaiming our energy. So, focusing on ourselves is really important in this time. Healing is about consciously deciding where your attention and care go. You can practice nervous system regulation, tuning into what you want. You then turn around investing that energy into someone else who doesn't deserve it, into yourself, where you can finally reconnect with yourself, find out what turns your light back on, and you can also turn that energy with your friends, for your self-care, for your family, for hobbies or personal growth, anything that you really want to do now. This is your life and you get to create it. So you can reclaim your energy. And number 5, but I still think it's really important, and we haven't talked much about this, but when we're in a narcissistic relationship, when it starts to go wrong, we often stay in the fantasy that it's a perfect relationship. We're going to have this perfect future. Everything's going to work out. But it's about moving away from the fantasy as you heal and notice and being in touch with reality. So to finally heal, we'll need to grieve that fantasy, what you wished was going to be the future between you and the person that you were with. We need to mourn who we hope someone could be and not who they actually were.
Mm.
And healing then can help us let go of the illusion, freeing us to engage and seeing reality for what it truly is, and making sure then that you don't attract the similar relationships in the future.
Yes, when we heal, uh, we relearn to trust ourselves and we make wiser choices. You become someone who can love fully, but without losing yourself in the process. And that's the most important thing. When you feel that you are not being yourself, that's another big red flag.
Exactly. You can reclaim that authenticity and who you truly are. So being hurt by a narcissist, I've been there. It doesn't mean that we have to fully become suspicious of everyone and the world,
Mhm.
but also not being naive. We need to have discernment. Not everyone has our best interests at heart. But by also being hurt by a narcissist, we do evolve and grow in consciousness and can see these patterns and red flags. So we get to, in fact, see clearer and choose wise, as David said, but also love intentionally and find the right person. And that discernment and knowing those flags and knowing who's got your best interest is your power. And that will help you regain your energy and have our energy back. So it's really important to remember that. So, coming full circle, the ancient world warned us about narcissists, not because loving yourself is wrong, but because loving yourself at the expense of others and caring for others destroys connection. So, we need a balance, don't we? To also love ourselves is important, to have self care. That's not being selfish, but that helps us fill our cup so we can have equal amount of love to give out to others. And real love is reciprocal with mutual support, often positive, and people can often deal with differences in opinions and feedback and conflict without it getting heated, and they're quite rational and able to communicate and create consistent change. So it's important to not be hardened by the world, but realizing that there are the right people out there, but also that your energy is sacred, your boundaries are not selfish, and you are allowed to choose relationships that feel safe, reciprocal, and real.
After all that we have explored, the Narcissus myth, the neuroscience, the love bombing, the trauma bonding, and the boundaries, it comes down to one powerful truth. You are the author of your own story. You don't need to live by the patterns and the web of this ancestral lineage. And that's why the next week episode is all about rewriting your story.
Yes, I can't wait. So, for rewriting our stories, it means we don't have to stay trapped in these patterns we were conditioned to follow as children. We get to decide what relationships we allow and what we don't allow, what energy we get to protect, and how we show up in this world. Rewriting our story is all about clarity, discernment, and reclaiming your voice, remembering your authenticity, your truth. It's about choosing connection, not chaos, freedom, not fear, and self-trust and not doubt. So I'm looking forward to this episode.
Yes, think of it as planting a new garden in the place of an old, toxic forest, and you may carry memories of what once grew there, but you have the power to plant seeds, to nurture the growth of these new seeds with joy and safety. And every boundary you set, every red flag you notice, every moment you choose your peace over someone else's drama, that's part of the rewriting of your story. And the best part is that you are capable of doing that. You are worthy. And the narrative from here, it's yours to create. So let's just see it as a new episode of your series or a new season of your series.
Mm. Yeah, writing the new chapter and what's going to come. It's exciting when you do have that moment where you do break up and then get to rewrite a new story. There is a moment of sadness, but you get to rediscover yourself, love yourself again, and perhaps find love again in other people. So, looking forward to next week. And thank you for joining us today.
Mm.
Please follow us if you're on LinkedIn, Spotify, Facebook, or Apple. You can find us all over there, even on YouTube. So it'll be good to connect with a few more of you, share any topics that you'd be interested in us speaking about. We've got our first monthly masterclass coming up, which is really exciting on Friday, the 27th of February. It's going to be about how to start your wellness journey, planning for a healthy year. What we'll cover is our basic needs to live well, helping us understand our nutrition in a simple way, how eating slower can help us absorb more nutrients. We might also talk a little bit about our hunger and anxiety eating, something that I've definitely suffered with in the past. We'll bring together some ancient herbal wisdom and modern science, making it relatable. And by the end of it, you'll definitely feel healthier, happier, and more whole so that you can really create the best 2026. So we look forward to you joining us there. It's £10 per masterclass. But if you join us on Facebook and LinkedIn, there's some discounts there. So we'd love to invite you and see you there and create this wellness journey together.
Thank you, and please enroll in this class because you will get a lot of information to, let's say, to clear the noise of these nutrition hacks, trends, and things that are just in the social platforms and get the real science made simple for you. Thank you, and we will wait for you in our next episode. Bye.
Bye.